On March 17, 2008, in the quiet town of Fairfield, Connecticut, 3 young women vanished without a trace. Sisters Emma Blackwood, 19, and Sarah Blackwood, 21, along with their cousin Jennifer Blackwood, 20, were last seen leaving their grandmother, Eleanor Blackwood's sprawling estate on the outskirts of town. The temperature that day was an unseasonably warm 68 degrees, with clear skies and a gentle breeze, a perfect spring day that would soon turn into the beginning of a nightmare for the Blackwood family. The 3 young women had been attending what Eleanor called a family commitment ceremony, an annual tradition she had established when the girls were just children. None of the other family members were particularly concerned when the girls didn't return home that evening. They assumed the ceremony had run late, as it often did. It wasn't until the following morning, when all 3 missed their university classes and weren't answering phone calls, that alarm bells began to ring. The Blackwood family was prominent in Fairfield County, with roots dating back to the 1800s. They had amassed considerable wealth through real estate and banking interests. Eleanor, now 78, was the matriarch who controlled the family fortune and, as many would later discover, exercised tight control over family matters. The missing young women represented the youngest generation of Blackwoods, all of them college students with promising futures ahead. Detective Michael Reeves of the Fairfield Police Department was assigned to the case. His initial assessment noted that the girls' cars were still parked at Eleanor's estate. Their cell phones were missing but inactive, and none of their bank accounts had been accessed since the day of their disappearance. Interviews with family members revealed a disturbing pattern of behavior from Eleanor, though most relatives were reluctant to speak openly. The grandmother was very traditional, Detective Reeves noted in his initial report. Several family members hinted at unusual family practices, but refused to elaborate when pressed. The first 48 hours of the investigation yielded few leads. Eleanor Blackwood insisted nothing unusual had happened at the ceremony and that the girls had left together around 7 p.m., planning to go back to their respective campus dormitories. Security cameras at the estate's entrance confirmed they had indeed left the property, but where they went afterward remained a mystery. The family's privacy had always been fiercely guarded. The Blackwoods rarely participated in community events, and the younger members were always closely supervised. This isolation had sparked rumors in town over the years, but no one had ever suspected anything truly sinister was occurring behind the estate's wrought iron gates. As search parties combed the surrounding woods, and investigators interviewed students at Connecticut State University, where the 3 attended classes, a picture began to emerge of young women who appeared outwardly normal, but were unusually isolated from their peers. "They were always together," said Melissa Chen, Emma's roommate. "They never dated, never went to parties. They would sometimes mention family obligations that seemed to take precedence over everything else. I always thought it was weird how they'd disappear every weekend to go to family events. If you want to follow more cases like this, that shake entire communities and reveal hidden truths, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any investigation." 1 week into the investigation, Detective Reeves obtained a warrant to search Eleanor Blackwood's estate more thoroughly. The initial walkthrough had revealed nothing suspicious, but Reeves was convinced that the key to the young women's disappearance lay somewhere on the property. The breakthrough came in Eleanor's study, a room that had been conspicuously locked during the first search. Inside, investigators discovered a safe containing journals belonging to each of the missing women, dating back to their early teens. The contents were disturbing. "We were raised to understand our purpose," wrote Emma in one entry dated just 6 months before her disappearance. "Grandmother says the Blackwood bloodline must remain pure. She's shown us the family tree, how cousins have married cousins for generations. She says it's why we're superior. Sometimes I wonder if this is normal, but I'm afraid to ask." Other journal entries revealed a systematic indoctrination process. Eleanor had apparently been grooming her granddaughters since childhood to accept the idea that they would eventually marry their male cousins, maintaining what she called the purity of the Blackwood lineage. The journals indicated that as the girls reached adulthood and began to question these expectations, Eleanor's control tactics had intensified. "She made us swear on the family Bible again today," Sarah had written just weeks before disappearing. "Said we would bring shame to everyone if we broke our vows. David and Michael and Thomas are supposed to be our future husbands, but Michael told me secretly he has a girlfriend at college. Grandmother would be furious if she knew." The investigation expanded to include interviews with the male cousins mentioned in the journals, David, Michael, and Thomas Blackwood, all in their early 20s. Unlike their female counterparts, these young men had been allowed more freedom, attending colleges farther from home. Michael Blackwood, when questioned, broke down and revealed a disturbing reality. "Grandmother has been planning these arranged marriages since we were born. The girls were always told they had no choice. We were given more leeway, but there was always the threat of disinheritance. I think the girls finally decided to break free." This revelation shifted the investigation. What had initially appeared to be a disappearance now seemed like it might be an escape. But why hadn't the young women reached out to anyone? And why leave without taking their cars or accessing their bank accounts? The investigation took another turn when Eleanor's longtime housekeeper, Maria Vasquez, came forward with information she had initially withheld out of fear. "Ms. Eleanor has underground rooms," she told investigators, "beneath the East Wing." She called them the contemplation chambers. Sometimes the young ladies would be sent there for days when they questioned family traditions. A second, more comprehensive search of the estate revealed a hidden entrance to a basement level not shown in any of the house plans. Down a narrow staircase, investigators discovered 3 small rooms, each with a bed, bathroom facilities, and a desk, comfortable but clearly designed for confinement. The rooms were empty, but evidence suggested they had been recently occupied. As the investigation intensified, family members began to speak more openly. It became clear that Eleanor Blackwood had been enforcing a system of arranged marriages between cousins for decades, justified by a twisted interpretation of family heritage and genetic superiority. Those who refused were subjected to psychological manipulation, financial punishment, and in some cases, temporary confinement in the contemplation chambers. The investigation also revealed that Eleanor had ties to a small, secretive group that advocated for what they euphemistically called genetic preservation through selective family alliances, essentially a network that promoted consanguineous marriages under the guise of preserving superior bloodlines. This network extended beyond Connecticut to several other states, raising concerns that the missing women might have been transferred to another location within this network. 2 months into the investigation, a significant breakthrough occurred when Thomas Blackwood, the youngest of the male cousins and himself only 18, came forward with crucial information. Unlike the others, Thomas had been kept closer to home due to his age and had witnessed events the night of the disappearance. "They weren't planning to run away," he revealed in a tearful interview. "They were being punished for refusing to sign marriage contracts grandmother had drawn up. Emma had met someone at college, a boy she really liked. When grandmother found out, she was furious. The ceremony that night wasn't a normal family gathering, it was an intervention." According to Thomas, the 3 young women had been given an ultimatum: sign contracts agreeing to marry their designated cousins within the year, or face being sent to what Eleanor called a family reformation center in rural Montana, a remote property owned by one of her associates in the genetic preservation network. "They refused to sign," Thomas continued. "All 3 of them stood together. I've never seen grandmother so angry. She called some men, not family, but people she knew from her network. They took the girls away that night. Grandmother told everyone they had run away in shame, but it wasn't true." With this new information, the FBI was brought into the case. The investigation expanded to include Eleanor's connections in Montana, revealing a disturbing operation. The Family Reformation Center was located on a 500-acre ranch outside of Kalispell, Montana, isolated from neighboring properties by miles of rugged terrain. FBI agents, working with local authorities, conducted a raid on the Montana property on May 28, 2008. There they found not only Emma, Sarah, and Jennifer Blackwood, but 7 other young women from different families across the country, all being held against their will in what amounted to a re-education camp designed to break their resistance to arranged marriages within their families. The conditions at the facility were not physically abusive, but the psychological manipulation was intense. The women were subjected to daily lessons on family loyalty, genetic superiority, and the supposed historical precedent for cousin marriages. They were denied contact with the outside world and told they would only be released when they consented to their family's wishes. Leave in the comments, never give up on the truth if you believe all missing persons deserve to be found. The raid on the Montana facility led to multiple arrests, including the operators of the camp and, most significantly, Eleanor Blackwood herself. She was charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment and conspiracy, charges that shocked the Fairfield community and the extended Blackwood family, many of whom claimed they had been unaware of the extremes of Eleanor's actions. The investigation uncovered decades of manipulation and control. Eleanor had been the architect of at least 12 marriages between cousins within the extended Blackwood family over the past 40 years. Medical records revealed concerning patterns of genetic issues among children born from these unions, information Eleanor had actively suppressed. Emma, Sarah, and Jennifer Blackwood were finally free, but their journey to recovery was just beginning. Psychological evaluations revealed the extent of the manipulation they had endured throughout their lives. They had been raised to believe that their only value lay in maintaining the family bloodline, that the outside world was inferior, and that questioning family traditions was the gravest betrayal. "It's like being raised in a cult, but the cult is your own family," Emma explained in a statement read by her therapist. "You don't realize how abnormal it is until you see the shock on other people's faces when you casually mention your grandmother's expectations." The legal proceedings against Eleanor Blackwood and her associates became a landmark case in family abuse law. It highlighted a form of control and manipulation that often went undetected because it occurred within wealthy, respected families who maintained a veneer of normalcy to the outside world. Eleanor Blackwood was eventually sentenced to 25 years in prison. At her sentencing hearing, now 79 years old, she remained unrepentant, insisting that she had only been preserving family traditions that had made the Blackwoods successful for generations. The broader network of families practicing arranged consanguineous marriages came under intense scrutiny. The investigation expanded to include families in Virginia, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts, ultimately resulting in the identification of over 30 young people who had been subjected to similar pressures and manipulation. For the Blackwood cousins, the aftermath brought both healing and challenges. The family fortune was placed in a trust, with provisions made to support the younger generation's education and independence. Many family members severed ties with one another, unable to reconcile after the truth emerged. Others worked to rebuild relationships on healthier terms. 5 years after their rescue, Emma Blackwood, now a psychology student specializing in cult deprogramming, established the Family Autonomy Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping young people escape family-based coercion and control. Sarah became an attorney focusing on family law, while Jennifer pursued a career in genetic counseling, a field she chose specifically to help families understand the true risks of consanguineous relationships. The case of the Blackwood family served as a wake-up call for many communities across the United States. It demonstrated how wealth and social standing could mask serious abuse, and how traditions maintained in the name of family heritage could be used to justify control and manipulation. As Detective Reeves, now retired, reflected in a 2018 interview marking the 10-year anniversary of the case, what happened to those young women wasn't about preserving family heritage. It was about control, pure and simple. Eleanor Blackwood didn't care about her granddaughter's happiness or well-being. She cared about maintaining her power over the family. It's a reminder that abuse doesn't always look like what we expect it to. Sometimes it wears the mask of tradition and family values. The Blackwood case led to changes in how law enforcement approaches reports of controlling family dynamics, particularly in wealthy or isolated communities. It also sparked conversations about the fine line between respecting cultural traditions and recognizing when those traditions become vehicles for abuse. For Emma, Sarah, and Jennifer, their journey from victims to survivors to advocates represents the ultimate rebellion against their grandmother's vision for their lives. Rather than being forced into relationships that would have perpetuated cycles of control and genetic concerns, they have each found their own paths and purpose, using their traumatic experiences to help others and ensure that other young people trapped in similar situations know that escape is possible and help is available. If you watched all the way through, it's because you care about these cases that mark families forever. Leave a comment saying I watched it all, so I can get to know you and find out who really cares about the search for truth. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, like this video, and share it with someone who appreciates stories about justice and resilience.